State of emergency. President Tinubu steers Rivers State ship out of troubled waters and to the coast of peace and stability. National Economic Council to finalize support for local production of farm implements to boost dry season farming. Hello and welcome to Executive Recap for the week to take you through activities within the presidency in the last 7 days and with fresh perspectives. I am Musbat and Wahab. Thank you for being with us on the NTA. Rivers State is back to normal democratic rule after 6 months of state of emergency and the subsequent return of Governor Siminalayi Fubara to the state has been greeted with diverse reactions from residents of the state, with many of them commending the decision of the president on the matter. Upon returning from his annual vacation in France, President Bola Tinubu declared that the emergency rule be ended, saying that the intelligence available to him showed that there is a groundswell of a new spirit of understanding, a robust readiness and potent enthusiasm on the part of all the stakeholders in Rivers State for an immediate return to democratic governance. The president declared that Governor Fubara, his deputy Ngozi Umaudu, members of the Rivers State House of Assembly and the Speaker Martins Amewule resumed work in their offices from 18 September 2025.
It has become inevitably compelling for me.
Following the crisis amongst the bigwigs in the state leading to instability in governance and with effect on critical national assets, President Tinubu on March 18 declared a state of emergency, which saw the appointment of Vice Admiral Ibokete Bass as the sole administrator of the state for the period. And within the week, the National Economic Council revealed that it is finalizing arrangement to ensure implementation of the anticipatory action framework intended to protect vulnerable households and enable timely and dignified interventions for the riverine areas in Nigeria. That was one of the major outcomes of the Council's meeting for the month at the State House. The Council said it is also working out plans to encourage local production of small farm implements to boost dry season farming in the country. The 152nd meeting of the National Economic Council is certainly not one of the most attended, yet the discussions and resolutions are far-reaching under the chairmanship of Vice President Kashim Shettima. The rains are winding down for the year and the flooding about to peak. Fears are imminent again for Nigerians in the riverine areas and those along the riverbanks. The perennial challenge got attention of the Council as it received a briefing from the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, on the anticipatory action framework, mainly to protect the vulnerable households across the country.
The objectives of the anticipatory action framework include, but not limited to, protect vulnerable households, enable timely and dignified interventions before flooding peaks, focus on equity, ensuring no communities left behind, amongst others. However, Council resolved that the scope of the framework has to be widened in order to include more states and submit final document for ratification at the next meeting of NEC. Most importantly, Council has also considered the inclusion of measures that will be taken to ensure medium and longer term sustainable solutions that will prevent flooding or reduce the flooding rather than the shorter term non-sustainable solution.
Jigawa State Governor Umar Namadi presented a memo seeking federal state action towards addressing the challenge of cost of production aggravated by lack of access to affordable energy and fertilizer, particularly for smallholder farmers.
Meaning that opening the door, bringing in more players into the production of fertilizer, and through either giving incentives or so many. So the framework will come up, and that will show that by the time it's a concept of demand and supply. The more players are in, it becomes more competitive, and therefore the likelihood of dropping the price of fertilizer is likely to happen. So that's exactly the concept we are asking for the mandate to be given to the Presidential Implementation Committee.
The council moved a step up for solution as the Vice President led members to inspect samples of battery-backed solar power irrigation pumps proudly made in Nigeria by the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, NASENI.
These pumps, they're supposed to replace fuel-driven, petrol-powered systems and lower energy costs for farmers, improve irrigation access in off-grid areas, reinforce Nigeria's food security strategy. Residual storage of energy within the battery also allows this pump to even operate after sunset. So even at night, it can actually pump water for at least 4 to 5 hours. Council's resolution after NASENI's presentation and also demonstration says that the Council should adequately notify Mr. President about Council's recommendation and the need to provide funding for NASENI to scale up the production so that we can meet the next 2025-2026 dry season farming. In addition, Council also mandated the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning to work out the modalities for the increase of funding to NASENI.
Minister of Agriculture and Food Security Abubakar Kyari also updated Nigerians on various efforts towards attainment of food security in Nigeria.
We are at a point where we are now handling the PFI 3.0, not we as ministry, but the government. Over time, yes, the import was to liberalize the fertilizer industry. And that's why even within the last administration, we saw the rise of blending plants from about 4 or 5 in just a matter of a few years to about 90 today. Fertilizer, the most used fertilizer is NPK, out of which the component of FK, there are 4 main components of NPK. One is phosphate, one is potash, one is urea, and the other one is a filler. Potash and phosphates are imported. These are the main components of fertilizer are imported. Urea is what has been mentioned, that the Honorable Minister of State Gas is supposed to get in touch with the 3 main manufacturers of urea, which is Dangote, Indorama, and Notore, because urea is made out of gas. It's 95% gas, natural gas that we have here available in the country. So, and there was an agreement that they should supply 30% because the prices of gas that were given to these companies are at a concessionary price. So they should supply 30% local to satisfy local demand. So, of course, you would see the imbalance in terms of structural issues in terms of imports and logistics. And you also recall, for the first time in 12 years, in this country, Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu last year gave out 2,150,000 bags of fertilizer free of charge to farmers. Yeah, there are questions sometimes people will say, and half of it were even given to states. And some may say, I have not received it, but it went to the market, it went to the farmers, it went to the soil. Fertilizer cannot be eaten or cannot be done anything else but to grow. And you also agree with me that last year we had a net positive harvest, which meant we had a positive harvest of much more than any other previous years in the last 5 years, what we had. And that's one of the reasons why prices are crashing and also are stabilizing. So the question here is whether the intended policies of Mr. President, amongst other mixed strategies to bring down prices of food, yes, we could see the trajectory, we could see where we're heading to. It was much more lower than even 2023, even 2024 December. And for the first time, you would also agree with me, even look at the tomato lean season. The lean season of tomato, May and June, prices have not gone up. Prices have stabilized. So what we're saying here is that when you look at the trajectory, I think we should give kudos to Mr. President and commend the actions and the strategies that Mr. President had developed. Yes, there are security issues, but you also admit, we know that we have on the armed forces have unlocked a lot of potential areas, Birningwari axis, in fact, a lot of places, even in Katsina, Funtua area, and so on and so forth. Excellency Borno State can testify. We have not seen the kind of harvest we saw last year in a very long time. So what we see is the unlocking of a lot of agricultural lands due to security efforts. About the tractors, we have basically 4 mechanization programs: the Belarus 2,000 tractors, the John Deere 2,000, the Green Imperative program with Brazil, and the Greener Hope mechanization program. So the Belarus tractors all completed, everything is on ground. And when it was commissioned a couple of months ago, land preparation had already passed. So it's now that we're going to face the dry season that the distribution will take place. The John Deere has not been initiated yet, but it's in the works. The Green Imperative with the Brazil, you are aware that it's on the table of discussion at all the 3 times Mr. President had been to Brazil, and it's in the final stages of, we have signed the MOUs and the agreements.
Meanwhile, Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, spoke on the Nigeria Economic Summit coming up soon.
The National Economic Council also received briefing by Dr. Tayo Aduloju, who is the Chief Executive of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, on the 31st Summit, Nigerian Economic Summit, which is taking place at Transcorp Hilton between the 6th and 8th of October 2025, with the theme, The Reform Imperative, Building a Prosperous and Inclusive Nigeria by the year 2030. The summit is an operation between the Federal Ministry of Budget and the private sector, and this is the 31st edition. And the included in the theme are elements including the reform landscape, policy direction for sustainable development, inclusive reform imperative, noting the uneven global growth, geopolitical tensions, rising climate tension, geopolitical tension rising, climate and technological shifts, demographic shifts, as well as inflation and policy. And this summit is taking place at a time when we are reviewing the National Development Plan, which the 2021 to 2025 plan is finishing by December, and therefore we are developing the 2026 to 2030 plan, as well as other elements that have been approved already. Mr. President have already called upon us to achieve a $1 trillion economy by the year 2030. The National Economic Council have approved a number of initiatives, including the Renewed Hope World-Based Development Program. So all these will form part and parcel of the discussions at the summit. The Chief Executive duly notified the Council of the invitation to both Mr. President, His Excellency the Vice President, as well as Excellencies respective governors of the states, so that it can be an all-inclusive and vibrant discussion that will help shape the future of Nigeria's economic discourse.
And President Bola Tinubu has once more assured family members of late President Muhammadu Buhari and Nigerians that the spirit of honesty and integrity of the former president will be sustained without stains. The president visited the widow of the former president Aisha Buhari in Kaduna. The president also attended a wedding ceremony of a son of former Zamfara State Governor Abdulaziz Yari. Arrival of President Bola Tinubu in Kaduna for a dual mission. The number and caliber of high-profile public officers on the receiving line clearly indicated the popularity of the main host of the day, a former governor of Zamfara State, Abdulaziz Yari, whose son found a partner.
National salute! Present out!
And then to the Sultan Bello Mosque for the wedding fatiha. Serving and former governors from across the country, members of the National Assembly, ministers, Islamic scholars, among others, were there to honor the groom's father, a senator currently representing Zamfara West. But on this occasion, President Tinubu represented the Yari's family in the solemnization of Nasiruddin Yari and Sefiya Shehu Idris. Earlier, in the Jummah sermon, Chief Imam Mohammed Suleiman admonished Nigerians to support the government to succeed in the fight against insecurity in parts of the country. Loyalty played out as the president and his entourage of governors and high-ranking National Assembly members moved to the residence of late Muhammadu Buhari. Family members joined the widow, Aisha, to receive a political associate of a late husband. While promising continued solidarity with the family, President Tinubu says he will continue to sustain the impeccable virtues of his predecessor.
We're just here to assure you that we share in your grief, we share in your pain. A loss in flesh is not a loss in the spirit. The spirit that he left with us, the spirit of hard work, dedication, patriotism, and honesty. We abide in that. We assure you, you and the entire family, and we will continue with the legacy of our leader. And the spirit that he left behind will not be stained.
Ajia Aisha appreciated President Bola Tinubu and other Nigerians for the historic burial ceremony accorded her husband.
I will thank you for all the support given to us. I thank Nigerians. I thank your administration. I thank every one of you, most especially your wife, the governor's wives, the minister's wives, Speaker.
They prayed for the deceased, his family, and for a more peaceful and prosperous Nigeria. And Nigeria has expressed its readiness to deliver a world-class event if granted the right to host the Commonwealth Games slated for 2030, tagged Abuja 2030. Representing President Bola Tinubu, Chief of Staff Femi Gbajabiamila led a federal government delegation in a meeting to further convene the Commonwealth Sports Bid Evaluation Committee of the State House.
I believe to support the bid.
Nigeria is taking a step forward towards securing the hosting rights for the 2030 Commonwealth Games. Having hosted an edition of the All-African Games, FIFA Under-17 and Under-20 World Cups, as well as some continental championships, the Commonwealth Games remain one of the top global sporting events yet eluding the country. Similarly, no African country has ever hosted the Games, despite 22 Commonwealth countries on the continent. And with the support of other African member nations, Nigeria is facing India in the final stage of bidding.
The time has come for Nigeria, and indeed all Africa, to offer the warm embrace of her hospitality, the grandeur of her culture, and the passion of her people to the Commonwealth Games. Our bid is grounded in the conviction that the 2030 game in Nigeria will not only celebrate sport, but will also ignite a legacy of transformation across our continent.
I can assure you, we're ready, we're willing, we're able, and we actually want this.
Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, emphasized the characteristic aim of a Commonwealth as an umbrella of unity and diversity, which he says qualifies Nigeria for the hosting rights.
Nigeria has set on this administration, particularly on some bold reforms to reposition sports as a strategic driver of national development. Our role within this family has always been clear, to stand for unity, equality, and progress. Beyond the infrastructure, which is very important in terms of your evaluation. So there's some intangibles that you can't even put your finger on. That is what you will find in abundance, apart from the infrastructural development, in abundance in Nigeria. You know, the people, their warmth, their hospitality.
Other stakeholders justified Nigeria's position as the country promises to partner the private sector and civil society organizations to ensure that every aspect of the Games meets international standard if granted.
Bidding to host the Commonwealth Games clearly aligns and is in tune with the vision of Mr. President to drive this vision. And we believe if we get the opportunity to host the Commonwealth Games in 2030, it will create so much massive positive for the country, not just in terms of sports, but in terms of infrastructure development and wealth creation.
This country has one of the biggest sports market in the world. As one of the biggest population of sport enthusiasts in the world. Beyond football, this is the time to be our friend, to support us. Let's have the Commonwealth Games here in Nigeria 2030.
When we look at Games now, very, very different in relation to the bidding process, very, very different to what happened in the past in relation to the way these games were awarded.
Nigeria is slated to make presentation of a final bid slated for September 24 in London. And that has been the program, the executive recap on NTA for the week. Thank you so much for being part of it. Join us again next week for another package of the show. God bless you and God bless Nigeria.